We're going to use the Pure Pit Wall to review the Monaco Grand Prix now with Shove. A tricky weekend for the team, but let's take a look back at Valtteri's strategy. Coming in on lap 33, which was fairly early on, what prompted your decision to bring him in at that point?
Well, this was all governed by what the Red Bulls were doing, because we had them behind us. Verstappen stopped, so he's obviously putting us in a position where he could undercut. So with Valtteri, we really had no option but to react to Verstappen, because otherwise that would be a place that we'd definitely lose. What they also did, though, was use their two cars very cleverly. They triggered that with Verstappen, but they left Ricciardo out. And Ricciardo had very, very good pace. He'd been looking after his tyres, and he had low degradation. And his end of stint pace was very good. So we were then running up against Sainz. So Valtteri didn't really have anywhere to go. He was going to get sandwiched between Sainz and Verstappen. Ricciardo had the gap just even before we hit Sainz, but obviously when we were stuck there, he could extend that. And it was a nice sort of strategy played out where they used both of those cars to take the position off us, and obviously moving Ricciardo into that final podium spot, which was obviously frustrating when you lose it, but we didn't really have the pace on the day to defend it.
So now let's look at Lewis's strategy. Coming in on lap 46, you kept him out much longer than anybody else on the grid. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, we knew it was going to be difficult following the qualifying on Saturday to get into a good point scoring position. And we run a lot of simulations of how the race is going to play out. And time again, we were seeing that going long was always going to deliver more than stopping early. And obviously following what the field does is never going to give you great rewards when you're starting further back. So the message going into the race was quite simple for Lewis. It was look after the tyres, bide your time. You're never going to overtake those cars on track. And when the stops start triggering and they all start peeling in, we were looking for that window of clear air where he could actually demonstrate his pace and the pace in the car and recover some of those positions. So he did that very well. It was always going to be difficult for us to finish better than 7th. We always knew that Sainz was going to be one of those key cars that if we're stuck behind him, that's where we are till the end of the race. But overall, he got the most out of it that he could that day.
So here we can see all of the top 10's tyre strategies played out, and there we see Lewis staying out longer than anyone else. And similarly, if we look at the predicted pit strategies, we can see that Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo staying out, and they benefited from this overcut that we heard so much about. Why was it working so well in Monaco this year?
Well, it wasn't really just working well in Monaco. It was more about how well they looked after their tyres when they were stuck in traffic. And they were very, very quick as soon as they got the free air. The super soft tyre wasn't maybe working as well as we'd thought, and perhaps not as well as a few other teams had thought, but it was surprising just how quick Vettel and Ricciardo were on that used ultra soft at the end of their stints. And if you look at it in the case of the two Ferraris, well, Vettel was quicker on that used ultra soft than Kimi on the new super, so it was inevitable that he was going to beat him in that situation. Again, with Red Bull, they were able to do it very well. They were also able to use their two cars to pull in Valtteri and give Ricciardo the free air there to actually demonstrate his car pace. But it's all about how well you look after the tyres, and if you've damaged your rubber, if you've worn them down early in the race, then the overcut won't ever work.
On lap 60, we saw that awful crash with Pascal Wehrlein. Luckily, he was okay. The safety car came out and Max pitted right at the beginning of the window. Was there ever a chance that you might have brought Valtteri in at that point?
Well, I mean, as you say, the first thing was it was a relief to see Pascal was actually okay. It was a nasty accident that just from looking at the car, you can't see whether the driver's been hurt or not. So great to see him get out okay. It was something that we had considered with Valtteri. Obviously, we can't stop before Verstappen stops. If we stop, we gift him the position, and there's no way that he would have come in and taken new tyres. So we had to wait and see what he did. He came in, well, that was completely to be expected. He had the gap, he had a free stop as such. And that created a window that Valtteri could have stopped in, but the difficulty is we didn't have a lot of margin on that. Because Verstappen was close to us beforehand, we would then only be just dropping out in front afterwards. And there was a second or so. But if you lose that time in a pit stop, you've given up the position. And this was one that was really, it wasn't so much a strategy call as a balance of risks. The risk that the stop goes wrong in any way, and the actual very low risk that a car on fresh tyres will overtake a car on used tyres around Monaco. It's practically impossible. And while it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was comfortable for Valtteri, he came on the radio just to say that it was a bit of pressure that he was under. But actually he did a good job, and to be fair, Max was driving very sensibly. He was able to hold him up. It was a bit of work and he had to think about preserving the tyres and getting the right exits. But in the end, I think we made the right decision just to stay out on track there.
And if we look across here on the weather section of the Pure Pit Wall, we can see 54 degrees for the track temperature. What was that doing to the cars and the tyres?
Well, in terms of the tyres, it's obviously hard on the tyres. It pushes up the surface temperature and it'll drive up the wear, it'll drive up the degradation. Interestingly, around Monaco, the whole track's not that hot. There's a lot of it that gets in shade, obviously the tunnel's completely in shade. But the areas that see full sunshine are very hot, and it does make a more oversteery balance. It does get harder to look after the cars on those long stints. The other thing with Monaco is because there's no long straights with high speed, you don't get a lot of that cooling air going through the car. So in these high ambience, and that is actually quite hot for a Monaco Grand Prix, it's very difficult to cool the cars, to cool the brakes. And you saw a number of people, a number of teams asking their drivers to just cool down a bit. Partly because the car's getting hot, but also because you're never going to pass. So they can sit up behind someone pushing the car hard, but in reality, it doesn't buy anything. But it's all down to the fact that the speeds are low and you don't get that air going through the car.
If we look up in the top left-hand corner now, then we've got the fastest pit lane times. We can see where everyone finished, but nice to see that Lewis finishing fastest in the pit lane times, and also Valtteri making it into the top 6 too. How much pressure were the pit crew under to get it right with only one pit stop?
Well, they do a lot of practice, and actually they don't really behave any differently when it's Monaco to any other race. So yes, they're under pressure. If they get it wrong, you just can't recover. If you lose time in the pits, you lose positions, you're never ever going to get them back. But actually the guys are just very focused on the job that they're doing, and I don't think it really makes a lot of difference to them. But it's just nice to get quick stops, because it is an important race. You never know how those pit stops are going to go, and at Monaco you've always got to target small gaps. You've never got the luxury of seconds and seconds of margin. You've just got to go for the opportunities when they arrive.
And we're talking about pressure in the pit stop, but also on the pit wall, because with so few overtakes happening in Monaco, I guess it must have been a fairly stressful race for you on the pit wall as well to get the strategy right. Well,
races are always stressful. There's always a lot of work and a lot of thinking about what's happening. As you can see, the 9 overtakes, well, it tells a bit of a story about the circuit, and it's certainly no easier with these wider cars that we've got this year. But to be honest, we're just trying to execute the plan, maximise the opportunity on the day, which I think we did that well from a strategy point of view. But we're looking forward to Montreal and try and get a bit more next time.
Well, we'll see you after that then, Shah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.